And now I'm going to spotlight you guys. Spotlight for now. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ling-Fei,
My name is Charles.
and together we're the Oboe Duo Agosto. We're really happy and excited here to present our music, either written, adapted, or commissioned for Oboe Duo or Oboe English horn duo from our living room. And most of all the music that you're hearing or you just heard are pre-recorded in our living room to ensure better sound quality. But we will also be doing some live demonstration.
All right. Thank you so much for having us. The first selection you just heard, it probably sounded familiar to many of you. It is, of course, Mozart's Magic Flute, or Die Zauberflöte. This Mozart's Magic Flute was premiered in the final year of his life, in 1791. It has a very simplistic surrounding in the sense that it was sung in German. Many operas of the time that were more important were sung in Italian. This was sung in the vernacular for a local theater group. And belying that, underneath that simple exterior of this fantastical and adventure-filled plot was the sense that it's almost a fable, that by the end of the opera, not only are you whistling all the tunes, but you're thinking that there's this universal universal message for peace for mankind. The two arias we're featuring today come from the most down-to-earth character. As you can see here, Papageno is the bird catcher. He is the one who helps the hero, the prince, rescue the princess. In the picture there, you'll see that around his neck he's carrying these panpipes. And so that was this little motif that Mozart used. That when he went do-do-do-do-do, when he would play that, you'll notice that there are 5 pipes, and every single time it's that little 5-note scale. This is a short excerpt of the libretto, the text, and the picture is of the very first person who premiered the role of Papageno, the birdcatcher, a man by the name of Schikaneder, who was also, besides being a very talented singer, he was also an impresario and librettist himself. He encouraged Mozart to write this opera. The next selection, Ein Mädchen oder Weibchen, translates as a girl or a little wife. And it comes from much later in the opera when Papageno, the same person, this whole time Papageno has been lamenting that what he really wants is like he can catch all the birds in the land, he's so good at that, but what he really, really would love is companionship, a partner for life. A girl or a little wife is what he desires most. That's what Papageno wishes for the most. I will point out in this little picture here, you will see that he's carrying in one hand what looks like a strange looking lyre or something. Those are actually metal bells strung on a contraption. And in many traditional performances of this opera, that's the original shape of the bells that he's playing. And what they do in performance is that instrument is actually played in the pit by a glockenspiel, or like a small metal xylophone, or a celeste, which is a keyboard instrument that sounds very metallic. A girl or a little wife is what Papageno wishes for, and this is just the text and the musical lines that he is singing. Our next piece features the music of Ralph Vaughan Williams, the English composer from the 20th century, one of England's greatest composers, that if you are not familiar with his work, you'll probably be familiar with his folk song settings. The Fantasia on Green Sleeves is one of my mother's most favorite works. She made me play that a lot when I still played clarinet when I was in middle school. Also, it's essentially a violin solo piece with orchestra, The Lark Ascending, is also amazing. His symphonies are among his most well-known works as well. He loved literature and poetry, English, of course, and he set many of them to vocal works. And we'd like to play for you 5 songs by William Blake. William Blake, for many of you might know, was an English romantic poet and also a philosopher and a painter. And he was able to also, set his illustrations to print. And luckily for us, we have many of his original prints for a whole host of his illustrated poems that he had published. So the songs we'll be playing for you are taken from William Blake's Songs of Innocence, which was released in 1789 by itself. 5 years later, in 1794, he released Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience together in one in a separate collection. And as you might expect, what he does in the second release was that he wanted to contrast the 2 states of the human soul, is how he put it. Many of you will be familiar with the poem Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright in the Darkness of the Night. That is taken from Songs of Experience. Contrasting with the tiger, in Songs of Innocence, he wrote about the lamb. The first song we're playing for you is entitled Infant Joy. Just as an aside, to contrast with that, William Blake wrote Infant Sorrow for the Songs of Experience volume. I'll just recite a little bit of the first stanza just so you guys have the rhythm of the text. I have no name, I am but 2 days old. What shall I call thee? I happy am. Joy is my name. Sweet joy befall thee. The next, Blake himself didn't call it The Piper, but it is the first poem in the collection, and he just wrote it under his introduction. All of this artwork is by Blake himself, by the way. Piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, and he laughing said to me. What's interesting about this particular poem and adaptation for music by Vaughan Williams is you'll hear almost 2 voices, the child and the narrator. This is the second half of the poem. The third, all of these are available in public domain, so they're very easy to find. The illustrations too, so the images. This one is the most ambiguous rhythmically. There's no set. Vaughan Williams chose not to make it a set rhythm. Ah, sunflower, weary of time, who countest the steps of the sun, seeking after that sweet golden clime where the traveler's journey is done. This one, by the way, is from Songs of Experience, as you probably can tell. This one's interesting. Notice that on one side, I said from a divine image. That is the correct text, from a divine image. On the other side, the plate, it's the divine image. The divine image is from Songs of Innocence. And if I can just recite one small part of it, from the Songs of Innocence, Blake writes, "For mercy has a human heart, pity a human face, and love the human form divine, and peace the human dress." Contrast that with this version, a divine image from Songs of Experience. Cruelty has a human heart, and jealousy a human face. It's really powerful language, I think. The last selection or song is one that Vaughan Williams did not take from Songs of Innocence and Experience. Instead, it's from a small collection that we now know as Several Questions Answered. That's a misprint. He who binds to himself a joy doth the winged life destroy. But he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. Incidentally, there was a second plate for the whole collection, and as you might be able to tell, the image is of Adam and Eve being cast out of paradise. We arranged these selections because Vaughan Williams originally wrote them for oboe / English horn, played by one person, and voice, either a high voice or a low voice. And since it worked so well and it sounds so beautiful in that arrangement, we decided to take it for ourselves. So Ling-Fei will be playing the role of the oboist, and I will be playing on English horn, I will be playing the role of the singer.
So Vaughan Williams set 10 poems, 10 Blake songs, and then we chose 5 that suits the register of the oboe and English horn.
Play.
For our next piece, just briefly, Thea Musgrave is a world-renowned and extremely well-decorated composer. She has won 2 Guggenheim Fellowships. She's currently living in the States. She's Scottish-American, so we're staying somewhat in the British Isles. One of her good friends is the oboe virtuoso Nicholas Daniel, for whom she wrote this piece, Take 2 Oboes. We're playing the last 2 movements of it. The first is called Serene. The second is entitled Frisky. The story behind this is Nicholas Daniel wanted some pieces that he and his students could play together. And as student pieces, they show a lot of interesting techniques for the oboe, but also compositional techniques. Compositional techniques like asymmetrical meters, rhythm patterns that, not the common time in 4/4, but 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 3, which adds up to 7. And she uses that quite a bit in the dance movement, Frisky. In both movements, she uses what's called an octatonic scale, not a major or minor. An octatonic scale alternates half steps and whole steps, which I'm going to ask Ling-Fei to demonstrate now. It sounds really interesting. You know it makes sense, but it is still pretty, I don't know what the word is. Some people would, catchy, or, several generations ago they would use the word exotic, I suppose. So, Take 2 Oboes.
so that was the Take Two Oboes by Thea Musgrave. For the next two pieces we are going to present to you were actually music commissioned by us, written for oboe and English horn. Daughter of the Sea was written by Andrea Clearfield, a Philadelphia-based composer. And then we commissioned this piece through the Women Composers Festival of Hartford back in 2014 when we were the ensemble in residence. And then this piece was inspired by the poetry of Pablo Neruda. I believe most of you are very familiar with his works. And so the poetry that she inspired her to write this piece was the 100 Love Sonnets. And we will present to you three movements from this music. And then when she wrote this music for us, she asked us if we had any preference or if we had anything we wanted to her to use. So Charles just asked her for extra musical elements. And she was very creative. And in turn, she actually asked us to sing and speak poetry while we play. And then she also incorporated staging, lighting, and movements across the stage. And in this piece, you will hear Charles in the third movement using some extended technique that he will demonstrate here. So the one of them is flutter tonguing. I don't know if you could hear, there's this, how would you describe that?
I'm basically rolling my tongue while I'm playing.
To create that rumble.
To create this fluttering sound in the note.
Yeah. And also, another extended technique that you'll hear is the multiphonics.
Which means more than one note being played at a time. However, on wind instruments, that more than one note aren't always in tune. So it creates a pretty raucous sound.
Yeah, so when Andrea first wrote this piece for us, although she asked for some staging elements, we were still playing with the music. But after several performances of this piece, we decided to work with a choreographer. Her name is Katie Nole Stevenson. She's the professor of dance at the Hart School. So we upgraded this piece. So we later performed it a year later in Tokyo at the IDRS conference with choreography. So we memorized this piece and then we moved around while dancing and speaking. But in the video we present to you today, it's in our living room. So if you're curious about what us moving around, I can't really say we're dancers. You can go onto the YouTube channel and you'll see, just YouTube our name, and then you can see a trailer of us moving around. But in the video, you'll see some of the pictures of us.
So we'd like to read some of the poetry for you today. Really, just excerpts from each poem.
Your hand flew from my eyes into the day. The light arrived and opened like a rose garden. Sand and sky throbbed like an ultimate beehive carved in the turquoise.
Your hand touched syllables that rang like bells, touched cups, barrels full of yellow oil, flower petals, fountains, and above all, love. Love, your pure hand guarded the ladles.
My ugly love, you're a messy chestnut.
My beauty, you're as pretty as the wind.
Ugly, your mouth is big enough for two mouths.
Beauty, your kisses are fresh as new melons.
My ugly one, I love you for your waist of gold.
My beauty, for the wrinkle on your forehead.
My love, I love you for your clarity, your dark. You are the daughter of the sea, oregano's first cousin, Swimmer, your body is pure as the water. Cook, your blood is quick as the soil. Everything you do is full of flowers, rich with the earth.
Your eyes go out toward the water, and the waves rise. Your hands go out to the earth, and the seeds swell. You know the deep essence of water and the earth, conjoined in you like a formula for clay.
My ugly love. So the last piece we would like to share with you today was written by Phil Salate, a very good friend of us. This piece was actually one of the first pieces that we commissioned back in 2010. And Phil, he's currently a teacher of music theory composition at the Crane School of Music at SUNY Potsdam. And then when we asked him to write this piece for us, I guess because we are husband and wife, so he chose the name, chose to write the music on Mandarin ducks, which are birds that have similar connotation as swans in Western culture. So they're just female, male, for life. So, and then if you're interested,
Sorry.
so if you're interested, like after you listen to this piece, if you're interested, you can go to Spotify or Amazon. We actually recorded this piece in a series of works by Phil under Parma record. So these are just small vignettes of the birds, the Mandarin ducks, and they are there. And then you will also hear some extended technique that Phil used on top of the multiphonic, the flutter tongue. In one of the movements, you will hear circular breathing.
Circular breathing is a way for wind players to continue to play while taking in new air, expelling the oxygen through the instrument, inhaling through the nose. And luckily, I don't have a cold today, so. So theoretically, if my lips can maintain it, I could play for a long, long time.
As long as his mouth doesn't fall apart.
Right, which has happened before. And as long as I'm not congested, which has also happened before. All right, without further ado. Where is it? Okay, so thank you again so much, and we were really happy to be able to present our music to you and share stories of the music and of our friends with you. So there's a couple of questions already in the chat that we'd like to start with, and I think we can probably cover a couple of them. Let's start chronologically in the sense that someone asked about the history of the oboe, and to compress that into a brief couple statements, maybe. Some people believe the oboe, or a double reed instrument rather, was found as early as ancient Greece. And so on some paintings of urns and pottery, you'll see musicians or satyrs or fauns playing an instrument that had basically like two little recorders sticking out of it. And one hand would play each pipe. That was called an aulos, or A-U-L-O-S. And we believe that was a double reed instrument. It could also have been a recorder, we're not sure. But of course, double reed instruments can be found much earlier than the modern classical oboe, which was brought from the outdoors to the indoors by the court composer of the Emperor of France, the King of France, King Louis XIV, the famous Sun King, who was well known for his opulence and his palace at Versailles and everything else. And so for the king, Lully created an orchestra with strings were already in the ensemble, so they brought the hautbois, Hautbois, which means loud or high wood, because back then the outdoors hautbois, was very loud and meant for the outdoors. They shrunk the reed so it's more narrow. They shrunk the inside of the instrument so it's more stable. So a picture of the transition from the Baroque, I'm sorry, it's a rough image, but from the Baroque oboe to the classical oboe, a modern oboe is there. Those changed over the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. By the beginning of the 20th century, the modern oboe pretty much has kept its appearance. Of course, back in Baroque times, there were only like two pieces of metal on it. The history of the double reed, though, could be seen back in European times in the bagpipes, in Middle Eastern times in instruments like the Turkish zurna, which was used for usually for festivals and ceremonies. In the Far East, interesting that the name is very similar. Suona, in Chinese, is a ceremonial instrument. So double reeds existed. The idea of strapping two pieces of a vibrating wooden thing together to create sound as they vibrate against each other. And incidentally, you might not be surprised, it makes a rather ducky kind of noise. Okay.
But if you practice enough, you can play a half a scale.
And of course, the English horn reed is wider and shorter, but it creates a lower pitch. So we can manipulate it to do a lot of things. But
without the reed, the instrument itself does not make any sound. Well, can hear the key.
You can hear the clicks. Composers write for that, by the way. So, and the English horn, just a quick story. The English horn, we think, the origin of the name comes from the idea that in French, it was called the cor anglais, A-N-G-L-A-I-S. Cor anglais, anglais has another meaning, besides being the word for English. It means angled. the English horn, the cor anglais back in pre-Baroque times was bent because we didn't have so much metal on the instrument for the keys. The finger holes were really spread out and had to be further apart, so they bent the instrument. That's why it was angled. So English horn, angled horn doesn't sound quite as good, so maybe they just thought they called it the English horn. Why they called it a horn, I'm not sure either. But anyway.
It was loud.
Yeah. The other question was...
so we answered
that one.
reeds.
So Agosto, Agosto, as many of you might know,
In
means
Spanish and Portuguese means August.
August. August is the month that we started dating. So, and it's also, I mean, it's her birth month.
I think that's the month when we decided to become a duo.
And it's also the month we decided to become a duo. But I spent a long time thinking about the name, and it also had another meaning, which I thought, you know, that if we can play with a gusto, we can play with a lot of energy. I thought that was a pun that very few people might get, but I thought for me it made a lot of sense, and so I really liked the name. But at the time, we were also making annual trips to Brazil to teach at a festival there in the Northeast, in a city called Fortaleza, which is like a Miami for Brazil. It's a beach town with a lot of hotels and tourists. And we spent summers there, 3 weeks there, teaching students there, and we were so enamored with the music of Brazil. And so Portuguese was in my mind anyway, hence the name.
So moving on to the next question from Deb. How does the commissioning process work?
Oh, well, the simplest method is
Ask a friend, composer.
Phil, we need a piece for this conference we're performing at. Can you write something for us? And at the time, he was just our really good friend. He wasn't that well known. I mean, he had written some amazing stuff that we really liked. That's why we asked him. And apart from being our friend. And we thought he would do an amazing job for us. And so that was, Mandarin Ducks was our first commission, really. And we paid him what we could afford at the time, you know. And that's how we got the ball rolling for several of our friends and
then,
colleagues.
so when we commission, so we started off by asking composer friends. And of course, not all of them play the oboe. So we would, first of all, then they would ask, what is the range of the oboe? What's the lowest note you can play, and what's the highest note you can play? That's like the most basic thing. And then they would ask, what is the instrument is capable of? So hence, some of them used extended technique. But there's also some really good things that happen with composers who don't play the oboe. So they are not, when they write, they are not limited by the technical difficulty of the piece. And that also pushes us to go beyond what we think we were capable of. For example, the latest two pieces that latest piece that we commissioned for oboe, English horn, and electronics by Chicago-based composer Kyomi Choi. She just wrote this really, really high notes for the oboe, because the most comfortable for most oboists, the highest note that we're comfortable playing with is G6. Which you heard in the Musgrave, but then she just asked me, but the piece that she wrote for us, she just made me play even higher. Okay, sorry. Sometimes it comes out. So that's, a minor third higher than what I thought I could do. And by doing more of it, and I just became even more comfortable playing these really high and scratchy note on the oboe.
But oftentimes to composers, they're hearing things that we take for granted, or we think are flaws, and they think are actually really interesting characteristics. One of my favorite pieces that was ever written for us was by a good friend of ours, David McBride, who taught at Hart for many years before he passed away. And my favorite experience of working with a composer, because he asked us to play every single note we could, one by one, really slowly, and he wrote down what he heard in each note. It took like several minutes per instrument, and he would just make these comments like, "Whoa, that one! Whoa, whoa!" It's like, "Oh, that one sounds kind of muffled," or "Whoa, that one sounds just really huge." I mean, he was hearing things that, it's kind of like an innocence to it that we've been playing for who knows how many years now, and we just take these things for granted and we're jaded or whatever. But for a fresh ear to hear that and to notice all these characteristics was such a cool experience. So yeah, I mean, historically, you might have also noticed, besides the duck, another connotation that the oboe has in a lot of music is a sense of nature, the pastoral, right? Many of you know Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, the Sixth Symphony. The oboes featured, the woodwind instruments are featured throughout that one. And also throughout symphonic music, you'll notice that the oboe often gets the melody when something is very poignant or even melancholy. The oboe just has that kind of a sound. Sometimes when I'm watching TV or a movie, if there's some meaningful melancholy moment or something that just gets revealed, cue the oboe in the soundtrack.
Or the English horn.
Or the English horn. It just has that kind of a tone. And someone asked about the history of the instrument. Because the oboe had a history that spanned the globe, spanned continents, Western composers often, when they wanted something to sound Asian or exotic, they would write for an oboe. Yeah. So if you know the piece Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov, or the music where it needs to sound somewhat oriental, Debussy and Ravel used it too for the same purpose. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Did we miss any questions?
Did we miss any questions?
I don't see any more questions at the moment, but if anyone else has some final questions, please type them in, or you can unmute yourself and ask directly.
Yeah, and if you want more of our music, you're welcome to go to our website.
If you YouTube us, or
you could put something in chat, you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe. I already put in the direct link to the excerpt of the choreographed version.
I don't know.
How do you send to everyone?
You go to everyone. It should be at the very top.
Oh, okay.
Everyone in meeting.
So that is our website/blog, and more information can be found there. You can YouTube our name and other pieces besides The Daughter of the Sea. That piece I mentioned by David McBride, Portrait, is on there. And so we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, Hélène Santan, if there's someone you know, she has said, "Merci pour cette merveilleuse heure en votre compagnie."
She's a good friend from Montreal. I'm so glad you were.
That's great.
Listen.
And people are writing to me by accident, so I'll just read another one. Bill Warner Prouty, muchas gracias. Wonderful program. And I'll make sure. De nada. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.